Thank you and good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Education for November 25th, 2019. And we're going to have our backup secretary, Mr. Centers, take the roll.
Mrs. Bradford.
Here.
Mrs. Burden.
Here.
Mrs. Frank.
Here.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Here.
Mrs. Bonneville is not here. Mr. Centers is here. President Johnson.
Here, we do have a quorum. And Mrs. Frank, would you help us with the pledge tonight?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome to our regular meeting of the Board of Education. For those of you who want to follow along with our agenda, who may be here long enough to follow along with our agenda, you can step out of the door on the left, and there's a table that has both blue slips if you want to address the board and our agenda. If you're at home and want to watch, we've sort of revamped our website, so it's a little bit different than it used to be. So if you go to our website, livoniapublicschools.org, and highlight over the board tab, you will see that there is a board meeting information. If you right click on that, or left click, might be left click, it will take you to another menu and you will see board agendas. If you click on there, you'll see all of our agendas, and tonight's agenda is there. One of the other things that you'll see that's new to the board, we have laptops. We are going paperless. This is our first regular meeting with the laptops. So things, I'm apologizing in advance. It may be a little slow. We've sort of piloted it at some of the other meetings. It seems to go pretty well, but this being first time on camera in a regular meeting, it may just be a little slow, but we have quick learners up here, so we should be okay. We do have a lot of nice things on the agenda tonight, a lot of celebrations. It's going to be a great meeting. One of the things that I always start off the meetings with is I like to read our district climate goal. I think it sets our barometer and our direction on where we as a board and as a community should be going and thinking. And that is, all students will experience a positive, safe, and welcoming environment where both students and adults respect and value one another. Couldn't be clearer, could it? That's what it's all about. Doesn't matter if we have differences in opinions, and we all do, but we need to respect each other's position, and if we have disagreements, talk about it and compromise. This board does not always agree. We have some spirited discussions at times, but we always come together, and when we realize that we're all here for the students, it makes it a whole lot easier to compromise. And that's what we do. And anyone who comes before the board to speak will be respected in the same way. And we ask that speakers, although you may have some gripe or some other opinion, just have respect for the board. That's all we can ask for. So we're going to get going tonight with our first item, which is communications, and we have Ms. Jenkins. Good evening.
Good evening, President Johnson, members of the board, Superintendent Oquist. It's a special evening in LPS. Tonight, it is my pleasure to present the Livonia Public Schools Educator and Support Staff of the Year for the 2019-2020 school year.
So this is item 3A, and I will need a motion.
President Johnson,
Mrs. Jarvis.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolutions for the 2019-2020 Educators and Support Staff of the Year.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bradford, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you, President Johnson. Before we get into the introductions, let me first describe a bit about how we got here this evening. Back in the spring, we called for nominations from our parents, our students, and our staff. We asked for Educator of the Year nominations as well as the support staff nominations. since we did expand the program last school year to include the support staff positions. We had such a great response from our LPS community, and the nominations were all truly heartwarming. It was a pleasure to read through them all. Quite a stack, but it was a pleasure. Let's see. In fact, a quick story. We had one nomination that was somewhat unusual. It was submitted by a Roosevelt parent who nominated the whole school. Just one of the comments in this particular nomination reads, "This entire school makes you feel like you're at a home away from home. You know your child is in safe hands with staff that encourages, teaches, leads by example, and shows up to give their all every day." Well, since we do not have a School of the Year award program, we will move along and highlight the special people who make our schools feel like homes away from home. So how do we decide who receives this honor? Let me tell you, it is no easy task. A committee of 9 teachers, administrators, and support staff members review every nominee's packet prior to our selection meeting. It can be a grueling process because there are so many excellent candidates. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our committee members who devoted many hours to the selection process. We could not have this program without you, so thank you so much. In the end, we named 1 elementary teacher of the year, 1 secondary teacher of the year, and 1 support staff person of the year. These honorees join a long list dating back to the beginning of the original Teachers of the Year program, which began in 1983. I believe we have some former Teachers of the Year joining us in the audience. I immediately spot one. If I could have you stand real quick to be recognized. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's awesome. Without further ado, allow me to introduce this year's honorees. And as I call your name, I strategically sat them right here. So let me first introduce our Elementary Educator of the Year, Mrs. Kitty Yost. And our Secondary Educator of the Year, Mrs. Christy Ann Antonelli. And our Support Staff Person of the Year, Miss Abby Knopp. Okay, where am I here? So in my notes I say, you may be seated, but I see that you've already done that. Because listen carefully to all that is in store for our 3 honorees. There is a certain level of celebrity that comes with this distinction. First, I'm happy to serve as their agent for the school year. I'll be booking them at various community events during which they will be honored. Their celebrity status actually began earlier this evening with a special reception held in their honor prior to the board meeting. Thanks, a little quick shout out to Big Big Coffee on 7 Mile for donating the coffee for our reception this evening. Our honorees will also be recognized on the district's website and social media, in the district's dialogue newsletter, by the Livonia Chamber of Commerce at its annual Leadership and Awards ceremony, by the Livonia PTSA Council during its Founders Day event. And tonight we have special tributes from our local elected officials. First I have, and I'm just going to go through all of their goodies here and hand them to them before we call each honoree up to the podium. I think that might be easier. So we have a tribute from the state of Michigan for each of our honorees. And the tributes talk all about their accomplishments, and they're very personalized, signed by State Representative Lori Pohotsky, State Senator Dana Pohanke, Garland Gilchrist, Lieutenant Governor, and Gretchen Whitmer, Governor. So I will just bear with me, thank you. And we also have tributes from our Wayne County Board of Commissioners. We have one for Kitty Yost, and this one is signed by County Commissioner Diane Webb and County Commissioner Glenn Anderson. And we did these by district. There you go, Kitty. These are absolutely beautiful. At this time, I would love for any of our local elected officials who I just mentioned on the tributes to stand and be recognized. I know we have a few right in the front here. Senator Dana Polhanke, County Commissioner, yes.
And our county commissioners, Diane Webb and Terry Godfrey-Marecki.
Yes.
Thank you all
Thank you
for
so
being
much
with us
for
this
being here.
evening.
Okay, and now it is my turn to shower our honorees with gifts. First, each honoree's name has been engraved on the perpetual plaques that hang in our lobby of central office. Next, we have these awesome and quite, every year I like to take this out and show it, even though it's kind of cumbersome. But these beautiful engraved golden apple plaques, I guess it's a plaque. Gorgeous. Finally, we've assembled some gift bags. And inside these gift bags, there is so much loot. They are going to be overjoyed when they open these. We've got gift certificates from Amazon, Dick's Sporting Goods, Bar Louie, Detroit Tiger tickets, golf passes, rec center passes for the Livonia Rec Center, all donated by Wayne County Commissioner Terry Marecki's office, Livonia Parks and Recreation, Plant Moran Cressa, French Associates, the George Ott Company, NTH and RTA. And a special thank you goes to each and every one of these individuals and organizations for supporting our program tonight. I'm going to distribute the gifts. I should also mention each bag is stocked heavily with some LPS swag. Okay, so while they get their loot stashed away, I'd like to tell you a little bit about each honoree, so sit back and enjoy. We'll start with Mrs. Kitty Yost, and I'd like to invite Vice President Colleen Burton to join us at the podium to read a special resolution that we've prepared for Mrs. Yost.
Thank you. It is my honor to begin our resolutions of our three teachers and sports staff folks of the year with 1,000 teachers in our district and 2,000 employees of the district. It is truly an honor, and we are so thrilled. As I've mentioned to someone as I walked into the room, I knew your name before I knew your face because I heard it around the district. So those kids who have been blessed to be in your class have, as in many of our classrooms, but are so blessed to be under your guidance and your care for their whole school year. Livonia Public Schools Board of Education, resolution of November 25th, 2019. Whereas the trustees of the Board of Education are desirous of recognizing and promoting excellence in education in this school district, and whereas Kitty Yost, a 5th grade teacher at Cooper Upper Elementary and a 27-year employee of the Livonia Public Schools, has distinguished herself by being named Elementary Educator of the Year for the 2019-2020 by a district-wide committee of teachers, support staff, and administrators. And whereas, in achieving that recognition, it is evident that she is an exceptional educator going far beyond the expected range of her duties to meet the needs of students, colleagues, parents, and others. And whereas Kitty believes that all children need to feel supported and cared for before they are ready to do their best learning, and she is willing to go above and beyond to build and maintain relationships with her students while instilling the value of hard work in the classroom and in life. Now therefore be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education do hereby commend and congratulate Kitty Yost for being named Elementary Educator of the Year for 2019-2020 and for the dedication and loyal service she has rendered to Livonia Public Schools, to her students, and to the community. Congratulations. You stay here. I'm going to brag about you a little bit more. Thank you so much, Mrs. Burton. You can't get away. Okay. As was stated in the resolution, Kitty Yost is a fifth grade teacher at Cooper Upper Elementary, where she has been a staple for the past 13 years. 13 of your 27 with the district, correct? 13 years? Yes. She was nominated by 2 Cooper parents, both of whom had wonderful things to say in their nominations. Probably the most frequent comments about Mrs. Yost relate to her demeanor. A quote by Maya Angelou came to mind as I read through the nomination for Kitty Yost. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." In one nomination, one of the parents who nominated Mrs. Yost states, "She is so loving and she makes all of her students feel important. She also makes the classroom environment relaxing and helps kids feel confident." This parent goes on to say, "She always has a smile," which is very true, "and greets everyone with the same kindness, even while directing the parking lot traffic." Now that is a skill.
I'm getting really good at it.
Another nomination states, "She is a genuine and caring teacher who goes above and beyond for her students. You can tell she truly loves her job and helping her students succeed. Her smiling face every single day makes the school a better place." Each nominee is asked to fill out a personal insight packet in which they describe their teaching philosophy and how they uphold the mission of the district, as well as the community with character traits that have been established as part of the district's Culture and Climate Initiative. The very first line in Mrs. Yost's packet reads, "I believe that children need to be happy and feel loved to be successful learners." She takes the time to get to know each of her students, discovering their special gifts and ways that she can personally connect with them. She is known to go that extra mile to ensure her students feel safe and feel cared for. I'd like to share just one example of this. In response to the question on the reference form, which reads, "Tell us how this person has changed the trajectory of a student." Cooper Principal Dr. Owens had this to say, "During the 2017-2018 school year, Kitty had a student who had an unstable home life. He lived in a number of placements, ultimately ending up in a group home for boys. While the student had some challenges, Kitty never gave up on him. Each day, she greeted him with a hug and a smile, making him feel noticed and special. As you can imagine, the adults in this student's life have been inconsistent. Not Kitty, though. Over the summer, Kitty found out where the student was living, and she has visited him over the course of the past 2 years at his group home. This is so very special to the student and to Kitty. Her commitment to building and maintaining positive relationships is parallel to none, and a big reason why she is the perfect candidate for this award." I couldn't look at her while I was reading that. Do you need a Kleenex?
No, I'm good.
Here comes one.
Blubbering up here.
I knew that was going to happen. Colleague Julie Juniman said this about this particular situation. "When he was drowning, Kitty was his life preserver. and she changed the course of his life forever. This was one of many stories that were relayed by her colleagues. Dr. Owens also notes that Mrs. Yost has a competitive side to her as well, always striving to intentionally challenge her students to achieve their personal best. Colleague Robin Delamora wrote that Kitty sets expectations and holds her students accountable in a way that makes the students want to please her. They want to make her proud of their learning, of their progress, and of their kindness toward one another. Robin relayed the story about a shy child who was not socially connected and how Mrs. Yost helped him find his voice through writing. He did not yet know that he had a gift for writing. She put him in the famous author chair in her classroom and encouraged him until that confidence began to show. This student went on to win writing awards in middle school, and while in high school, he connected with others through music and through Quiz Bowl, and is now a thriving college student.
Oh,
She knows just who it is. Robin also had this to say. Her influence has been priceless. She educated him, she challenged him, she inspired him to be his best self, and she continues to express interest in his well-being and in his educational journey. And these were just a few ways in which Mrs. Yost, and I quote, works her magic. And with that, we'll allow Mrs. Yost to say a few words.
So now I will just blubber through this. Thank you, everybody. I am so heartwarmed. I'm so heartwarmed by this. But it is not just me. It's all the folks at central office who ask for and listen to our opinions. And you support us every step of the way. I know it's not like this everywhere, and I really appreciate it. It's also the staff at Cooper. We've been through so much together, and we truly take care of each other. I treasure our friendships. You all work so hard and inspire me beyond belief. It's also my family who help me understand the needs of our school families and make me feel special and so loved. My own children are better people because of Livonia Public Schools, and my husband and I are very grateful for that. More than anything, it's the children I teach and their families. They bring such joy to my heart. I thank God for all the gifts He has given me, as I am truly blessed. I am so proud to be a part of Livonia Public Schools, and I promise to continue to work hard to be the best teacher I can be. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for those words, Mrs. Yost, and for bringing the tears to everyone's eyes. Next, I would like to invite Christiane Antonelli to join me at the podium, and also if we could have Board Trustee Dan Centers join us to read the special resolution that we've prepared for Mrs. Antonelli. There you are.
Whereas the trustees of the Board of Education are desirous of recognizing and promoting excellence in the classroom in the school district, and whereas Christine Antonelli, a business and marketing teacher at Stevenson High School and a 20-year employee of Livonia Public Schools, has distinguished herself by being named Secondary Educator of the Year for the 2019-2020 school year by a district-wide committee of teachers, support staff, and administrators. And whereas, in achieving that recognition, it is evident that she is an exceptional educator, going far beyond the expected range of her duties to meet the needs of students, colleagues, parents, and others. Whereas, Christine has showed a great, deep dedication to educating her students and supporting her students' growth, both academically and by instilling and modeling the soft skills and interpersonal skills they will need to be successful after completing their education in Livonia Public Schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education do hereby commend and congratulate Christine Antonelli for being named Secondary Educator of the Year for the 2019-2020 school year and for the dedication and loyal service she has rendered to Livonia Public Schools, her students, and the community.
We'll do a little shuffle. Thank you so much, Mr. Centers. Hello. As stated in the resolution, Christy Antonelli is a business and marketing teacher at Stevenson High School, a position she has held for 20 years. She was nominated by a parent who, in the nomination, states that Mrs. Antonelli is professional, supportive, encouraging, kind, thoughtful, and a teacher who models positive behavior and encourages active participation by students. Mrs. Antonelli not only teaches business and marketing, she is also the advisor for Stevenson's 70-member DECA student chapter. DECA is a global organization that prepares high school and college students in areas of marketing, finance, hospitality, business management with a focus on building leaders and entrepreneurs in those fields. Christy also serves on the Michigan DECA Advisory Board, which votes on policy and procedure for the Michigan DECA delegation. Prior to beginning her teaching career, she worked in retail management for 10 years. From that experience, she is able to inspire her students to explore potential careers from a real-world perspective. She said one of the best parts of her job is opening her students' eyes to the possibilities of their own futures and helping them to achieve their goals. In doing so, she not only teaches her students about marketing a business, she teaches and models those interpersonal and communication skills that will serve them well throughout their lives. Personal respect is one essential element in her classroom. She believes that all students need to feel safe and comfortable in the classroom in order to learn. Team building activities are used in her class, and she has her students read and study the Sean Covey book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. She models the character traits she is teaching and believes it is important that her students know that she is there for them. She sees them. She cares about them. Just one example cited in her nomination packet, Mrs. Antonelli recently helped a student who had experienced a change in her family dynamics. During this tough time, this student struggled with a lack of confidence. Mrs. Antonelli was there for the student as a shoulder to lean on, and by working to gather the appropriate resources for the student. According to Assistant Principal Pete Mazzoni, she was a rock for this student during these trying times. Through the curriculum, she is able to bring the real world into the classroom. She does this by hosting here-to-there guest speakers who share their experiences of transitioning from high school into their careers. She brings current topics, articles, and case studies with a focus on 21st century skill sets that universities and employers are seeking, such as critical thinking and problem solving. Her lessons are connected to a broader purpose and are transferable as lifelong skills. Her students are able to see the relevance in the classroom activity and how it can translate to life after high school. Colleague Lindsay Gray states that Christy was not only her mentor when she was first hired, but she continues to inspire and support her even though they now work at separate schools. Lindsay shared a story from 3 years ago when Christy was diagnosed with cancer. And I will quote Lindsay here directly. When she told me the news, I immediately offered to help and take her students to some DECA events. She told me she was not going to let her students miss out because of stupid cancer. She was going to do everything in her power to continue to work and be present at all extracurricular DECA activities. She did just that. She would go to chemo and then go to work. She even took 6 students to Orlando that year for the National DECA Conference while going through treatment. She was amazing and selfless through it all. Lastly, Lindsay, who teaches fashion merchandising at the Career Center, also shared a great example of how Christy helps students find their path. She and Christy shared a student who was interested both in marketing and in fashion merchandising. Mrs. Antonelli helped the student find a college that had both programs. She walked her through the application process, and she encouraged the student to run for a DECA office. According to Lindsay, the student was more confident and on a clear path to success when she graduated because of Mrs. Antonelli. And isn't that what it is all about? And with that, I welcome Mrs. Antonelli.
25 years ago, I decided to make a change. At that time, I had been in retail management for 10 years and was burned out. I wanted to do something more rewarding and have the opportunity to help others. So I enrolled in courses to pursue my elementary teaching certificate. Shortly after I started classes, I had a life-altering conversation with my sister-in-law, Linda Flynn, who's right there. At the time, Linda was a business teacher at Kimball High School in Royal Oak. She helped me to realize that I should be sharing my experience in business and my passion for marketing with high school students to help guide them to their own futures. She observed that I connect well with teenagers and explained how rewarding those connections can be for both the student and the teacher. Thanks to Linda, I changed my path and have been forever grateful for her advice that day. She has been a constant mentor and source of inspiration as she has modeled what an exceptional educator should be like. 20 years later, I stand here tonight, humbled by this honor. I feel truly blessed to have the opportunity to help influence my students' lives and to help guide them as they choose the path for the next chapter in their journey. As an elective teacher, I have many of the same students, 2, 3, and sometimes all 4 years in my classroom and in my DECA program. With this opportunity, I can really connect with my students and watch as they grow and transition into the next phase of their lives. One of the best parts of this connection is hearing from former students about how their experiences in my classroom and the benefits of participation in DECA has opened doors and fueled a passion for their career. These students are even willing to return to my classroom to share their passion with current students. I read an article by a fellow educator, Nicholas Ferroni, that stated the 3 most important characteristics of an amazing educator are compassion, passion, and knowledge. I feel that the gift of being a teacher is that we receive that back from our students, our families, and our community. I have received compassion from my students and colleagues during the most difficult times. I have been inspired by the passion demonstrated by my students' success and the day-to-day commitment of my peers. And every day I learn something new from all these influences that motivates me to be a better teacher. I feel incredibly honored to have received this award from a district that places an emphasis on academic excellence and empowers all teachers and staff to support one another in the interest of all students. I would like to thank Christina Setlock for my nomination and for raising an amazing child that has been a pleasure to teach. Also, thank you to Pete Mazzoni, Nico Scarcella, and Lindsay Gray for taking the time to provide some input about me to the committee. And finally, to the committee for my selection. Thank you so much.
And last but not least, we welcome our Support Staff Person of the Year, Miss Abby Knopp, to join me at the podium. Come on up, Abby. And also joining us is Board Trustee Karen Bradford, who will read through the resolution that we've prepared. Here you are. Thank you.
This is one of my favorite days of the year, but it's especially great today because I get to honor Abby Knopp here, and She and her family are good family friends of ours. So we've grown up together. Abby grew up in the gym. I guess we did too, with all our kids. And I was so excited to see that she was nominated, and it's truly an honor. She's just a great girl, and I'm just thrilled, so proud of you. So I'm honored to read this. Livonia Public Schools Resolution, November 25th, 2019. Whereas the trustees of the Board of Education are desirous of recognizing and promoting excellence in education in this school district, and whereas Abby Knopp, a paraprofessional in the Western Wayne Skills Center program at Garfield Community School and a 3-year employee of Livonia Public Schools, has distinguished herself by being named Support Staff Member of the Year for the 2019-2020 school year by a district-wide committee of teachers, support staff, and administrators. And whereas, in achieving that recognition, it is evident that she is an exceptional employee, going far beyond the expected range of her duties to meet the needs of students, colleagues, parents, and others. And whereas, Abigail displays a genuine gift in her ability to connect with students and focus on their abilities, not on their disabilities. And in doing so, she has affected her students' overall growth and confidence, both inside and outside of the classroom. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education do hereby commend and congratulate Abby Knopp for being named Support Staff Member of the Year for the 2019-2020 school year, and for the dedication and loyal service she has rendered to Livonia Public Schools, her students, and the community. Congratulations. Oh, here, you can add that.
Thank you. I love all the special connections. Okay, hi Abby.
Hi.
Going to do a little bragging about you here. Abby Knopp has only been with LPS for 3 years, but has already had a positive impact on countless students at the Western Wayne Skills Center, our work and life skills program for adults ages 18 to 26. Abby works as a paraprofessional at the Skills Center, working alongside behavior consultant Rick Dubé, who, by the way, is a former Teacher of the Year and the person who nominated Abby for this award. How this 2014 Stevenson grad okay, came to the Skills Center is kind of a neat story. Abby volunteered at the Skills Center while she was a student at Schoolcraft College, and she had not yet decided on a college major. After spending just one day in her volunteer role, working with students and observing in classrooms, she knew that she had found her place. In the nomination, Mr. Dubé describes Abby as someone who has a natural and instinctive ability to work with students. He said that she has the confidence and the knowledge of a seasoned professional. He notes that Abby is working on her bachelor's degree in special education and is ready to knock it out of the park as soon as she becomes a teacher. But in the meantime, she serves as a source of support not only for students, but also for the staff members with whom she collaborates. As we've noticed with the other nominees this evening, Abby has a special way of connecting with students and building trusting relationships that result in students feeling empowered and motivated to do their very best. Just one of the many roles she has at the Skills Center is that of a student mentor. Last school year, her students improved so much in her mentor group that they ended up becoming role models for other students within the school. She is known to celebrate their progress and achievements on a regular basis, keeping them motivated and engaged. She runs the Worker of the Month program, in which students are recognized for demonstrating the LPS community with character traits. She creates special certificates for each honoree, snaps a photo of each, and places the photo on a bulletin board at the school, which makes the students super proud, I am sure. But that's not all. She started a birthday club at the school, and she also coaches the school's travel basketball team. She's very involved in this awesome program. It should also be noted that Abby is on the coaching staff of the girls basketball program at Stevenson High School. She helps organize the school dances at the Skill Center and is even known to get right out there on the dance floor just to make sure all the students are having a good time. Abby is also involved in several school-based committees, and she even cares for the school's therapeutic pets. These pets include, I do not know how many fish, but probably a lot, 5 ducks and 2 bearded dragons. She and Rick Dubé select students to assist in the caring of these animals, and yes, during the school breaks, she takes the pair of bearded dragons home with her. Now that's some real dedication. She believes strongly in teamwork. She comes to work each day ready to contribute in any way possible, whether it's giving a colleague a break from the classroom, answering the phones in the office, or assisting teachers. Abby is ready and willing to chip in. She looks for ways to improve the day of her students as well as her colleagues. Principal Patrick Meese offers many praises for Abby in the reference forms. In the reference forms, he states, quote, "Abby is the epitome of a respectful person. Given her unique role in our Student Support Center, Abby is frequently asked to be flexible and substitute for a classroom paraprofessional or for an independence paraprofessional. Abby's flexibility and can-do attitude is remarkable." He goes on to say that Abby is well respected amongst her peers and the teaching staff and administration at the Skill Center. He said Abby is tremendously dedicated to her work, and this is reflected in everything she says and does. As part of her role in the Student Support Center, Abby is available throughout the day if students need to stop in for a positive boost, an encouraging word, or just a quick hug. According to Mr. Dubé, on average, they would see about 5 students per day in the SSC last school year, but by the end of the last school year, they were averaging 25 students per day. Most of whom just wanted to stop by, check in with Abby, and let her know how their day was going. She's known for offering positive praise and incentives for the students to do their best. As perfectly stated by Mr. Dubé, and I quote, "You know someone is good at relationship building when she assigns a consequence to a student and that student promises to improve their behavior in order to gain Abby's approval. She is creative in finding ways to reach students who may be experiencing some difficulty. Just one example Abby relayed in her packet pertains to a student who was having trouble staying in class. She worked with this student and discovered that he was unhappy with himself because he wasn't feeling very physically fit. Abby made a deal with him that if he stayed in class, she would do some exercise workouts with him 3 days per week. Well, the plan worked. He stayed in class, and they did their workouts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It was a win-win. In closing, Rick Dubé summarizes Abby in these 3 words: amazing, genuine, and overachiever. Congratulations, Abby.
As Stacy kind of said, my first time at the Western Maine Skill Center, I was just 19 years old. I was going to Schoolcraft College at the time, and I was an undecided major. I spent one day at the Skill Center, and I will never forget the excitement each student had on their face entering the classroom just to meet a new person in their building. Every student rushed over to introduce themselves, to give me a big hug, even though they were asked not to. They were all just so happy to see a new face. So not only did I feel like I was a celebrity, but what was supposed to be a boring day of taking notes and observing became a day that I couldn't stop smiling on my way home. And I immediately went to my mom and said, okay, I know what I want to do now. Now, years later, during my 3rd year at the Skill Center, the students still make me feel like a celebrity every single day that I see them. And I try to make them feel just as special as they make me feel every day. I feel extremely grateful to have the opportunity to work with some of the most unique, funny, kind-hearted individuals in the entire world.
Not only do I have the best students, but I couldn't ask for better peers to work with. I would like to thank the entire Western Maine Skills Center staff for their endless day-to-day support. I truly see us as one big team, and without my teammates, we couldn't do it. Thank you to my boss, Patrick Meese, as well as Mary Jarvis and Laura Flavin. Thank you for answering every pesky question I may have throughout the day with a smile on your face, and for the constant support you've shown me since I began working at the Skills Center. Thank you to my family for being my backbone and my #1 fans through every step that I have taken. I would like to give a very special thank you to Rick Dubé. This is only our second year working together, but if you saw us in action, you'd think we've known each other forever. He's been an amazing teacher, mentor, and role model to me. He has taught me so much the past couple years. Thank you, Rick, for nominating me for this award, even though you lied to me about it, and for all of your constant support. Lastly, I would just like to thank Livonia Public Schools as a whole. I know so many amazing support staff in our building alone, so I'm extremely honored and humbled to be receiving this award today. Thank you for everything.
Wow was right. Mrs. Burton.
I've been honored to be able to raise all 3 of our children going through Livonia Public Schools. And as I mentioned at the very beginning with Kitty Yost's comments, it is such a privilege to be a parent in this district and to have so many teachers, many who have come before you and who are your colleagues now. But we are thrilled so much to honor you 3 tonight as some of our teachers and our support staff who spend really almost as much time with our children as we do in a given day. But thank you so much for being the blessings that you have been to our children on a daily basis.
Anything else? I couldn't have said it better. I mean, what a great example you are of our district. We couldn't be prouder of you. Thank you so much.
Let's give them one more round of applause.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Thank you again. I also neglected to indicate we're going to take a short break after item B, which is coming up right now, so we can individually recognize our. It's after B. Okay. Oh, we'll do the superintendent's update first? Okay. It'll be after C.
The pressure's on.
Pressure's on. Okay, that takes us to item 3B. American Education Week from November 18th through the 22nd, 2019. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson?
Mrs. Burton.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District designate November 18th through 22nd, 2019 as the 98th Annual Observance of American Education Week.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mr. Centers. And Mrs. Jenkins again.
Thank you, President Johnson. Every year, our district, like those across the U.S., recognizes American Education Week, which was designated this year for November 18th through the 22nd. This is the 98th annual observance of American Education Week. And what an appropriate time to publicly recognize all of our teachers, as we have honored just a few of our brightest and best here tonight. There is quite a bit of history behind American Education Week, and I'll try to put it in a really small nutshell for you. Back in 1919, the National Education Association was distressed that 25% of the nation's World War I draftees did not know how to read, and 9% were physically unfit. The NEA teamed up with the American Legion to seek ways to generate support for education. In 1921, at the NEA Assembly in Des Moines, Iowa, a designation was created to recognize 1 week each year to spotlight education, calling for an educational week observed in all communities annually for the purpose of informing the public of the accomplishments and needs of the public schools and to secure the cooperation and support of the public in meeting those needs. Before too long, the observance was co-sponsored by the U.S. Office of Education, the National PTA, the American Legion Auxiliary, and a whole host of other organizations. The tradition continues today, and the resolution before you describes in detail the rationale for commemorating American Education Week each year in our community, our state, and in Livonia Public Schools. And at this time, I would like to invite, am I inviting you, are we working you some more this evening? Trustee Dan Centers to join me to read a special resolution that we've prepared. And also, if I can invite Paula and Jessica Reef, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, to join us at the podium. Paula is a parapro at Grant Elementary, and her daughter Jessica is a teacher at Franklin High School. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here.
Whereas public schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas public education employees work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism, and whereas schools unite entire communities, bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders, and elected officials in a common purpose. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the trustees of the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools Schools District do hereby proclaim November 18th through 22nd, 2019, as the 98th annual observance of American Education Week, and urge all citizens to make a commitment to public education and to the future of our children. Be it therefore resolved that the trustees of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education take this special occasion to thank Livonia Public Schools employees, parents, and community volunteers for the work they do to educate and support the children of our school district.
Thank you, Superintendent Oquest, President Johnson, and members of the school board. My mother and I stand here illustrating the strong role public education plays in Michigan. Mom's role as a paraprofessional in Livonia schools prompted two daughters to pursue rewarding careers as special education teachers, myself in Livonia and my sister in Dearborn. The commitment to public education lives on in our family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Mr. Centers.
Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
President Johnson.
Yes. The motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to item 3C, our district update from our superintendent. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Oakes.
Thank you so much, President Johnson. And I'd like to just take a moment and recognize Mrs. Jenkins for all of her work in coordinating the Educator and Support Staff of the Year process, for heading up the committee, and for coordinating this beautiful evening. So if we could give her a round of applause. And congratulations to each of our deserving honorees. We are so proud that you are part of our Livonia Public Schools family, and you embody everything that is good about who we are. Thank you. So we have some other great news. There's a lot to be proud of in Livonia Public Schools, and we have some things to share this evening. And we are going to put a few pictures up on the screen to share some good news as well. So we had the 63rd Annual Michigan Mathematics Prize Competition. It is quite an annual event that challenges our students, and I am pleased to share updates from this year. We had 59 students of the hundreds of students who took the exam qualified for Part 2, which they will take on December 4th. We had 54 students from Churchill, 2 from Franklin, and 3 from Stevenson. They scored among the top 1,000 students from across Michigan who took Part 1. And Churchill Jr., you have heard his name before, Yajvan Ravan, answered all of the questions correctly, the only student in Michigan to do so. You may remember that Yajvan also represented the United States at the Chemistry Olympiad this past summer. We are very proud of them. So moving on, we have some great news out of our middle school robotics teams. We now have 5 middle school robotics teams representing all 3 of our middle schools. So earlier this month, the Emerson Robo Eagles, who you see pictured here, won the championship at the Canton Districts and have qualified for the state championship already early in the season. Congratulations to Coach John Yergel and all the Robo Eagles for a job well done. Congratulations as well to the Robo Falcons from Frost, Team Black, which ran up a close second as finalists in Canton District. So yes, that meant it was a nail-biting match, Emerson against Frost. And so all of our robotics teams were in the hunt. On November 16th, we had another middle school competition. All 5 of our teams, including Holmes RoboHawks White and RoboHawks Green, competed at Novi High School. The Frost Robo Falcons White won the Connect Award. They were also the finalists. And honorable mentions went to the Falcons White for the Motivation Award, the Emerson Robo Eagles for the Design Award, and the Frost Robo Falcons Black for the Control Award. So congratulations. I know they look forward to becoming Livonia Warriors in the future, and as you know, we are so proud of all of our robotics students. Next, we had some other exciting news throughout the district. We saw some large checks coming into our classrooms as a surprise. So thanks to our amazing LPS Education Foundation, you'll see pictured here just a few of the deserving recipients. The LPS Education Foundation donated 23 grants this year for a total of almost $30,000. Just a reminder that every dollar donated by our LPS staff members goes to the grant program funds, along with generous donations from our corporate donors. So you see some very happy recipients, and our students are always the beneficiary of this generosity. Next, we have a couple of talented individuals. It is a rare honor, but we have Alyssa Hill, a senior clarinet player, and Elsa Wilson, a senior horn player, who were selected for Michigan All-State Band. This is the first time we have ever had qualifying musicians for this honor. It is a highly competitive process with only about 100 students selected for the band and orchestra out of over 2,500 students who auditioned. Next, we have some pictures of our Churchill and Stevenson Student Senate groups. Franklin was also participating. We don't have a photo of them, but our leadership students often go through training either in the summer or again through the fall and then again in the spring to represent their student senate or student congress. And we appreciate their advisors who take time on their weekends and during the summer to accompany them to learn and grow and to be wonderful representatives of Livonia Public Schools. We have wrapped up an exciting fall season, and I've had the pleasure of sharing many of those in-season highlights with you. Here are some end-of-playoff success. We had our Lady Chargers, who were regional champs. They made it to the MHSAA Elite 8. They made it all the way to the state quarterfinals. And they were also awarded Team Academic All-State. So it's been quite a year for the perennial powerhouse CHS volleyball team. So congratulations to all of them and to their coaching staff on really a tremendous season. Next, we have Churchill football. who were district champs and also made it to the Elite Eight. It was a big year in Churchill athletics. So they had won some hard-fought victories to make it to that point, and a big congratulations to them, as well as you'll see a picture there of their coach DiFilippo, who was named Regional Coach of the Year. So congratulations. It was a great season watching our teams this year. And we have, I know we have a lot of fans in the audience of our Western Wayne Skill Center basketball team and the very enthusiastic cheer team. So they had a tournament which was kindly hosted by Churchill High School this past week, and it was a great opportunity to watch them, a terrific event. We also had a number of qualifiers for swim and dive. We have a picture here of 5 of them from Stevenson. We had Kenzie, Ashley, Haley, Natalie, and Sarah. We also had 5 qualifiers from the swim and dive team at Churchill as well. So really a wonderful fall season, and winter sports season kicks off now, if you can believe it. Here we are, here we go. So we also had some great artistic talent to highlight. I've shared with you over the past couple of meetings that we had some of our large-scale plays at each of our high schools. So Franklin this past weekend had a wonderful performance of Anne of Green Gables. We had the Stevenson Drama Department, who a few weeks ago performed After, Happily Ever After. And finally, Kappa performed Mamma Mia at Churchill, and we had a little taste of that when we visited Churchill for our committee meeting last week. They sang Dancing Queen, and I think I heard Mr. Johnson singing along.
Not very well.
Last week, also, we had the LCTC Culinary Arts students prepared an amazing Thanksgiving buffet. The students from LCTC represent all of our high schools, and they provided a wonderful lunch service, food preparation at the Patriot Inn. If you have an opportunity to enjoy one of those holiday buffets, you should really take the opportunity to do so. So that was congratulations to all of them. We are so proud of their efforts. Next, you'll see the Fall Festival that recently took place at Niji-Iro Elementary, and I think we see a familiar face from the table with the beans and chopsticks game. Mr. Johnson was there. I think he beat Mr. DeLuca, but I think he was beat out by the young lady on the right in the final game. It's a really remarkable festival. I know many of us have had the pleasure to attend, and the students enjoy very many traditional Japanese games as part of that fall festival. And we are so fortunate to have, I believe, over 60 parent volunteers who help put on that event, along with the hardworking staff there. We were pleased to have one of our state representatives here tonight, Senator Polhanke, with us. We were also pleased to welcome State Representative Lori Putsky in the district this past week. So she visited Kennedy Elementary, visited all of the classrooms, spent some time with our OSBOT robots in the media center, and had an opportunity to really see all of the amazing opportunities for the students in our schools. And there she is visiting one of our music classrooms. And today we had a chance to visit the Stevenson National Honor Society. They did their annual service event called Fleece and Thank You. And the students were creating over 100, and I believe the total now is 175 blankets. And they will go to Children's Hospital, and little videos were made along from the folks who made the blankets, shared a short video message to the patient in the hospital who will be receiving their blanket. And then the patient will have an opportunity to make a video back for them. But this annual event is something that the Stevenson National Honor Society has participated with for many years, and actually I believe inspired the Holmes Junior National Honor Society to have their own Fleece and Thank You event this year as well. Just wanted to mention just another couple little things. We often get families asking, or community members asking, how they can donate to the District Clothing Depot. So our Livonia PTSA Council has coordinated a clothing depot for families in need for many years. It's now housed at Franklin, and it's proudly staffed by the students in our Franklin Transition Program. Well, they are in need of a number of items, so from pajamas to clothing to undergarments and other things for students and young adults. And so we're going to have some information up on our website as well as Franklin's website because oftentimes we've had a full complement of goods, but we're running a little low, and so we would appreciate any donations so that we can continue to help families in need. I think those are all of the highlights I wanted to share this evening. President Johnson, again, so much to be proud of in our district, starting with each and every one of our almost 2,000 staff on behalf of the over 14,000 students we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist. I would point out that with the chopsticks, I cheated and still couldn't win.
You gave it a good effort.
I did.
Thank you.
All right, so we are down to completed with item 3C, so we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and we will be back. Thank you. Thank you, and we are back from our recess, and we'll continue on with our agenda. We'll move to item 3D, written communications. Are there any written communications? I don't see any, so we will move to item 3E, audience communication. This is the point, and I do have 2 blue slips. This is the point in our meeting where the board gets to listen to community members who would like to address the board. Just a couple of things to keep in mind, that the board has 3 roles. One is policy, one is to hire and evaluate our superintendent, and the third is to set our financial goals to align with our budget. So if you have questions and want a response, if it's relating to any of those 3 areas, then the response will come from the board. Any other items, which we call our day-to-day items, those responses would come from our administration. We also have a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker, and Mrs. Burton will be keeping the time on her phone, and there'll be a little tone when you get to the 3 minutes, and I'll just ask you to wrap up. So as I indicated, I have 2 blue slips. The first is from Fran Gullickson. Good evening. You're on.
Come on up.
Come up to our podium and
Oh,
The enthusiasm, I love the enthusiasm of educators, dedicated educators, you can't beat it. My name is Frank Alexon. I'm a Livonia resident and a sub-teacher. I have spent 50 years plus teaching, subbing, or volunteering in public schools and have established an impeccable record for working with all students, especially those with learning and emotional difficulties. On Friday, October 25th, I received an email from EduStaff informing me that I had been accused of tugging on the top of a child's head while I was subbing in music at Hayes Elementary School. This never happened. I would never harm a child that was entrusted to me. I was barred from entering that school again or contacting the school or board about this incident. Since I thought we all had a wonderful time in music, I was shocked beyond belief. Oh, is that all? Here we go. Shocked beyond belief with this accusation. However, the greater shock was the deafening silence that came from the principal of that school and this board. As I did nothing to hurt this child, I was compelled to defend myself to EduStaff. A week later, Mr. Raymond called saying he read my response and agreed that I had a right to be heard and would like to have a meeting with me. I'm still waiting to hear the outcome of that meeting. I might add that Mr. Raymond spoke to my 3rd grade accuser, and I could tell that her story had changed dramatically. This indicates to me that she was making this story up as she went along. I am convinced that had I not sent that email to EduStaff, this matter would have been swept under the rug, leaving me hanging with no chance to defend myself or face my accuser. Bullying is wrong. I'm being bullied by an 8-year-old, the principal of Hayes, and the board. I was accused, tried, and convicted without one word for my defense. After a long career of teaching and protecting children, I am now branded with a black mark on an impeccable record. Who gives an 8-year-old this much power? Does a professional teacher have no credibility? I realize that all accusations must be taken seriously. However, in all my experience, I have never made a judgment call without first hearing the other side of the story as soon as possible. I would think you'd want to do the same. After all these years, it took moving to Livonia to make me aware of my vulnerability as a substitute and volunteer. This is a scary thought, as false accusations have ruined many lives. The classroom was my second home, to which I can never return. I did nothing wrong, yet nobody seems to care. In all fairness to me, I deserve an apology from the principal of Hayes School and this board for the thoughtless manner in which this problem was handled and the undeserved stress you have caused me. I also deserve to have this black mark off my record so I can end my career with dignity and peace of mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gallagher. Mrs. Oquist, would you look into this?
Yes, I'll have our HR department get in touch with EDGE staff regarding this situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
And the other blue slip is Carol Marcus. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board, superintendent. My name is Carol Marcus, and I am here tonight on behalf of Mrs. Gulexon. Fran Gulexon and I became instant friends 25 years ago when we met as teaching colleagues in the Dearborn Public Schools. Because we know each other very well, Fran confided in me the day that she was falsely accused at Hayes Elementary, and I too was stymied at the handling of this situation. She was being shut out without a word from her second home. If any one of you has ever been falsely accused of anything, then you may have an idea of how she feels. I would surmise that you too would attempt to confront your accuser, set the record straight, and clear your name. That is why we are here tonight. It saddens me to think that a wonderful, caring teacher such as Fran Gulexon, who took such a personal interest in each of her students over the years, will not continue to use her incredible gifts in the classroom. This is a great loss for all. Children will make up stories again. So how will it be handled next time? Will anyone take the time to listen? Will both sides be taken into account? As things stand now, the third grader's word gets 100% credence, and the teacher gets 0. Then why are the teachers called the professionals? Perhaps it is time to examine the current protocols in place.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I have no other blue slips, so we will move on to item 3F, response to prior audience communication. I do not have any. Does anyone on the board have any?
No.
Seeing none, that will take us to item 4, our consent agenda. And may I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Bradford.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the regular meeting of October 28th, 2019. 6A, approval to purchase door hardware, Michigan State Police Safety Grant.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mrs. Burton. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mrs. Burton, to accept the consent agenda. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Burton.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Johnson.
Yes. That motion carries. That takes us to item 6B, approval to purchase door hardware, Michigan State Police Safety Grant.
President Johnson.
Yes. Motion, Mr. Centers?
Move that the Board of Education.
Excuse me, we have an error.
It was in the consent.
Oh.
No.
It was in the consent.
No?
Yes,
Item B is not in the consent.
but it's listed in the consent motion. The consent motion
Oh,
was.
yes, it is.
Yes. What we really,
It's not listed in my consent
Yeah.
motion.
right here.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
yes, it's mislabeled.
Yeah. The door hardware, it should
It
be.
should be the lease.
The
It did
lease.
not.
Mhm.
Okay.
What we can do is vote on the consent agenda, the minutes, and then vote in each one of these separately if you'd like.
We will need to either add the approval of the lease renewal to the consent agenda and then re-vote, or we would need to, you do have the motion for the approval of the lease renewal, and you could address that as a separate topic, item 6A.
Okay.
If you'd like to do that, and then Mrs. Smith can still cover the information regarding the door hardware, but I would suggest that we go back to item 6A, which on the
Okay.
agenda is marked as part of consent, but not as part of the motion that was read.
And we'll do that as a separate motion?
Yes.
Correct.
All right,
So that would be,
I can read that if you'd like.
if you tab down to that item,
all right.
6A
So
has its own
6A.
motion.
this will be 6A. Okay, 6A, approval of lease renewal, Life Church of Livonia. I do need a motion.
President Johnson.
Mrs. Bradford,
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the lease agreement with Life Church of Livonia effective November 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020 for a total amount of $12,840.
Support.
we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers, for the approval of lease renewal, Life Church of Livonia. Mrs. Smith, can you
I sure can.
address that for us?
I'd be
Thank
happy
you.
to. As far as the lease goes, Life Church has been a leasee at Riley Upper Elementary School, and their needs have changed, and they're now looking to, with the board's approval, lease space out at Holmes Middle School, which will better meet their needs. So that's the lease renewal before the board tonight. Also, regarding the door hardware, we, as a district, sought out a safety grant made possible through the Michigan State Police, and were awarded that grant. We did our first round of purchases for these new thumb locks back in June, and now with the board's approval, we'll make a second round of purchases for additional buildings and classroom doors that have been identified as needing replacement.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Any questions or comments on item 6A, the lease renewal? Mrs. Burton.
President Johnson, just for clarification matter, we have already approved the minutes and the door safety latches. And even though we're now just hearing about them, which is fine, I mean, we've discussed them at least 2 prior meetings. But just for a matter of clarification, we have already approved the minutes and the door safety, and we will now be voting on the lease.
Correct,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the lease?
Just one other comment.
Mrs. Burton.
And again, as we discussed in prior meetings, this is a prorated lease for just a portion of the year, not the
That is
complete year.
correct.
Okay, from November through June. Okay,
That's
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers, to approve the lease renewal for Life Church of Livonia. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
President Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. And since we have already approved item 6B in the consent agenda, we'll move on to item 7, personnel matters. And we have teachers for approval. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and offer employment for the 2019-20 school year to the teachers listed on the attached document.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Frank. And Mr. Archibald is going to help us with this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Johnson. These individuals were interviewed along with other applicants for vacancies that existed in our instructional program. We believe the individuals listed are the most qualified for these positions and recommend that these individuals be approved for employment. Both positions are accounted for in the 2019-2020 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Frank, for the approval of teachers. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to item 7B, teachers for tenure. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Frank.
Move that the Board of Education of Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and acknowledge the tenure status has been granted to the following teachers effective on the respective date. Amanda Belzick. Do I need to repeat it or keep going? Amanda Belzick, October 30th, 2019. Heather Brubaker, August 29th, 2019. Carrie Parnell, November 15th, 2019.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. And Mr. Arch. Mrs. Britton.
President Johnson, I'm making notice that I'm going to be abstaining from this motion because a member of my extended family is on that list.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Mr. Archibald.
Thank you again, Mr. Johnson. The requirements to earn tenure include years of service and satisfactory performance as reflected on multiple annual year-end evaluations. We ask that the board acknowledge that tenure has been obtained by the teachers listed.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, to approve the granting of tenure status to the specified teachers. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Burden.
Abstain.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, that motion does carry. That takes us to item 7C, which is resignations. This does not require a motion and is for board information only. And that will take us to item 7D, resolutions of appreciations for employees who are retiring. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Bradford.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation for the services rendered by Marianne Ingram, Eileen Walsh.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. Archibald.
Yes, tonight we bring before you the names of 2 employees who will be retiring. These individuals retire with a combined 45 years of experience with Livonia Public Schools. I would like to offer both of them my sincere congratulations and ask that the board adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation and recognition of their years of dedicated service to the students of Livonia Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Any questions or comments from the board?
Congratulations. Yes.
Congratulations to all. Therefore, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers, to adopt resolutions of appreciations for employees who are retiring. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
President Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. That takes us to item 7E, sympathy resolution. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached sympathy resolution for the family of Sally Erickson.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Archibald.
Yes, thank you. If I may, Mr. Johnson, I'd like to read the resolution. Whereas the Board of Education was deeply saddened to hear of the untimely death of Sally Erickson, and whereas she was a valued staff member in Livonia Public Schools School District as an elementary teacher at Tyler Elementary and Cooper Upper Elementary, and whereas she consistently demonstrated her outstanding dedication, care, and commitment to students, parents, and colleagues, and whereas Sally Erickson will always be remembered with great fondness and with a profound sense of gratitude for the immeasurable contributions she made to our school district, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of Livonia Public Schools School District offers its deepest sympathy to family, friends, and colleagues of Sally Erickson. Signed, Tammy Bonifield, Board of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Archibald. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you, President Johnson. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge what a tremendous individual Sally Erickson was, and what a gifted, caring, and dedicated teacher she was. Our sincere sympathies go out to her husband Dale, her daughter Paige, and her son Jay. And she has made an indelible impact, not only at Cooper, but as we saw during her short illness, but what a profound impact she made on so many students. And so we saw tributes to her from not only current families and students, but those that had moved through Livonia Public Schools, places where she had taught previously, and so many colleagues, so many students, and so many families have been blessed to know Sally and to be touched by what a caring educator she was. So she will be missed greatly in Livonia Public Schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist. Any other comments from the board? This is one of those, and we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bradford. I think this is one of those situations, if my colleagues agree, that we just mark this as unanimous.
Yes.
We agree with that? Thank you. And that'll take us to item 8, hearing from board members. And item A is first reading of board policy, JB, compulsory attendance, JBA, placement of students, JBE, truancy, and JGCC, communicable diseases. And is that going to be Dr. Terrio? Good evening.
Thank you, President Johnson. The Policy Committee has met and made recommendations for these 4 policy changes for review. These policies were presented at a study session on November 4th for review, and at the Committee of the Whole meeting on November 11th, where each policy was read verbatim with noted changes. Policy JB, compulsory attendance, documents the law in Michigan governing compulsory attendance of students 6 to 18, as well as exceptions to student attendance, including parental excused absences, school business absences, health-related absences, and exceptions under IDEA and Section 504. One additional change was recommended at the Committee of the Whole meeting, which omitted the word legitimately in the 5th paragraph, 5th sentence, which now reads, "A school business absence includes field trips, counselor appointments, or other instances when the student is absent from class but is present in or involved with a school function." Policy JBA, placement of students enrolling into Livonia Public Schools, outlines grade level assignment of students, including kindergarten age students enrolling into Livonia Public Schools. This policy was read in its entirety at the Committee of the Whole meeting, and a change was recommended, omitting the word all in the first sentence, which now reads, "Students who enroll into Livonia Public Schools should customarily be placed in the grade assigned by the previous school." Policy JBE, students, truancy, was read and recommended the policy language be changed to be consistent with other policy language, which now reads, "The Livonia Public Schools School District shall report to the appropriate authorities any child who is absent from school in violation of the compulsory attendance law." And finally, policy JGCC, communicable diseases, supports the Wayne County Department of Public Health Disease Control reference chart as a guideline of communicable diseases and appropriate circumstances to exclude both students and staff from school, as well as confidentiality of this information of both students and staff. This policy was also read in its entirety and no changes were recommended. The Policy Committee recommends that all 4 of these policies move forward for a second reading at the next board meeting in December.
Thank you, Dr. Terrio. Any comments or questions from the board? Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. And looking at the compulsory attendance policy, when we looked at it at the Committee of the Whole, I believe the date was September 1st, and on this one it lists December 1st.
You are correct. That should read September 1st in the third paragraph, first sentence.
twice in that paragraph.
My apologies.
Good catch.
Oh, you need to turn your mic on, Mrs. Jarvis.
We'll get the hang of it. Let you go ahead.
You have to repeat that.
Oh, I'm sorry. In the compulsory attendance policy, in the second red paragraph, the new paragraph, the date December 1st should be September 1st. It's in that paragraph twice and should be corrected in each instance.
You are correct. My apologies.
Thank you. Any other questions on these four policies? And I might add that these were
No wonder I can't find it.
discussed at length
This right here.
at previous
Should be
meetings.
September 1st, right?
Okay, if there are no other corrections, then these will move on for a second reading at our December regular meeting. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, then we'll move on to item 8B, first reading board policy JK, fundraising activities. Mr. Willenborg.
Yes, thank you, President Johnson. Over the last two meetings, we have reviewed this rewritten and enhanced policy that now recognizes the desire and need for fundraising, but also acknowledges that fundraisers can be overly demanding on the school and business communities. The new policy continues to set an expectation that fundraising activities have administrative approval before any announcement or advertising for the solicitation of funds. I also want to point out that the administrative procedures for this policy, which received valuable and extended discussion during the committee meeting 2 weeks ago, has received slight vocabulary modifications guided by our in-house wordsmithing expert and sage. Those modifications are reflected by sentences highlighted in green in your packet. I recommend policy JK, Juliet Kilo, for a second reading at the next voting meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Willenborg. Any other comments on this policy? Mrs. Frank?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Willenberg because it is a momentous task that you are undertaking, and I know that you've done substantial work on this, and I think that having all of our district row in the right direction, in the same direction, is a great undertaking. So thank you for doing this work, and so that we can all have guidelines so that we're all on the same page. So thank you for doing this. I think it's very important work.
Thank you. It is a large animal and a huge beast that we're trying to tame a bit.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Any other questions or comments on policy JK? Seeing none, we're all good to move this on for a second reading at the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Very good. That'll take us then to item 8C, first reading of board policy BCBK, executive close sessions.
Yes.
Mrs. Oquist, are you gonna?
Yes, I'd be happy to
Help us
cover
with
that.
this.
President Johnson, as we discussed at our most recent Committee of the Whole meeting, the law now allows an additional option with regard to the Open Meetings Act guidelines regarding when the Board of Education may meet in closed session. As you know, the board may meet in closed session only for very specific purposes, and the law does allow that the board may move into closed session, quote, to consider security planning to address existing threats or prevent potential threats to the safety of students and staff. Because that has been added to the guidelines regarding the Open Meetings Act, it was necessary for us to update our bylaws and add that wording as item number 7. I'd like to also note below that there are the first 3 items for which the board may move into closed session. Only a simple majority vote is needed in order to move into closed session. However, for the items listed on this board policy, items 4 through 8, which also includes the new item. A 2/3 roll call vote of the members in open session is required in order to move into closed session. So again, the two changes for this policy will be to add that additional rationale for the board moving into closed session, and we will also identify that that is one of the items as it exists in law that requires a 2/3 roll call vote in order to do so.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist. Any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Burton?
Thank you, President Johnson. Frequently, this board has expressed frustration with our legislators or the legislative process or the outcome of that. This is not that case. This is a case where I would like to thank our legislators. This was passed into law very near the Christmas holidays of last year, and I would like to thank our legislators for giving logical permission for any Board of Education to go into closed session to discuss any potential threat or avoiding any potential threat to the district. It just makes logical sense, and frequently we are quick to let our legislators know when something is going in a direction that we do not approve of, not necessarily so quick to say thank you. But I would like to say thank you for allowing every Board of Education in the state of Michigan to take their security measures into privacy in order to protect all of our staff and all of our students and visitors in our buildings.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Any other questions or comments on this item? I do want to thank Mrs. Burton. She attended a seminar and brought this information back to us. And I know policy is your bag, so we appreciate you bringing this to our attention. So if we're all good with this, it'll go on for second reading at our December regular meeting. And that takes us to item 8D, second reading of board policy EB buildings and grounds. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson?
Mrs. Burton.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for Board Policy EB Building and Grounds.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Bradford. And Mrs. Smith is going to help us with this.
Thank you, President Johnson. As you know, we've discussed this board policy both at a study session, committee meeting, and also had a first reading at our last month's regular meeting. But for the benefit of the community, I'll read through the new policy as adopted by the board this evening. It shall be the responsibility of the superintendent or the superintendent's designee to oversee the maintenance of district-owned buildings and grounds. The condition and maintenance of school facilities and grounds is the responsibility of the school custodial staff with support from the district's maintenance and operations departments under the direction of the school's principal and the operations administrator. All regular practices to maintain schools in appropriate condition shall be in accordance with district practices and procedures. Upon request, the superintendent or the superintendent's designee shall provide the Board of Education with information as to the general condition of the district's buildings and grounds. Inventories of capital assets shall be maintained to protect the school district in the event of losses from fire, theft, or any other causes. All district-owned assets shall be utilized for the maximum benefit of district operations.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Burton, supported by Mrs. Bradford, to adopt the second reading of board policy EB buildings and grounds. Mr. Sanders, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Johnson.
Yes. That motion carries. That takes us to item 8E, second reading and adoption of board policy EBB safety protocol. And again, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, President
We
Johnson.
need a motion.
Oh, I need a motion. I have a motion, please.
President Johnson.
Mr. Centers.
Move that the Board of Education.
Your mic. This is microphone.
Thank you. Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language for per the attached document for Board Policy EBB Safety Protocol.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Now, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, President Johnson. And again, this board policy has been discussed at both a study session and a committee meeting, and it had its first reading at last month's regular board meeting. So tonight would be the second reading for this policy, and again, for the benefit of the community, I'll read through it. I do want to make note on this version, I see 2 words striked through that I believe the intent was to remove those 2 words from the policy, so I'll read that without, and those are found in the 3rd paragraph. I'm sorry for not seeing that earlier. The administration shall attempt to prevent accidents from occurring by taking reasonable precautions to protect the safety of all students, employees, visitors, and others present on district property or at school-sponsored events. It is the responsibility of the administrative staff to assure the safety of children while under the supervision of school district employees. The staff shall adhere to recommended safety practices as they pertain to school buildings and grounds, special areas of instruction, student transportation, school activities, occupational safety, etc. Each school's principal or designating leading administrator shall be responsible for the supervision of a safety program for his or her school, including adherence to the safety drill requirements per state law. The superintendent or the superintendent's designee shall have overall responsibility for the safety program of the district. The superintendent or the superintendent's designee shall inform appropriate staff members of current state and local requirements relating to safety protocols.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Any other questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Frank?
I just had a question, and I know we've talked about it in detail. It's on. Can you not hear it? The staff shall adhere to recommended safety practices. Is that something that is put in place by each principal, or are those district practices? And I'm sorry, I didn't think about that at the last meeting, but I just wondered, are those district practices or are those more school principal?
There are general safety practices as part of our emergency operations plan and part of our emergency book that is provided is part of that training for every staff member in each school. So those district-wide practices are the same from school to school. There may be some very specific safety practices based on the physical plant itself at a school, so where students enter, where they exit, where they come in from recess, where they line up during a drill or something of that nature. For the most part, the processes and the practices are the same, but there may be some very specific procedures and practices based on, again, the physical plant, the age of the students, but those are communicated as part of the training, the annual training that we go through each year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, to adopt board policy EBB safety protocol. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Burden?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
And President Johnson?
Yes. Motion carries. That takes us to item 8F, second reading of board policy EBBC, emergency drills. May I have a motion, please?
President Johnson.
Mrs. Frank?
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt the board policy language per the attached document for Board Policy EBBC emergency drills.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Burton and Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, President Johnson. In this policy, we have some minor changes, but again, I'm happy to read this for the benefit of the community. The superintendent or the superintendent's designee shall develop and implement, in cooperation with appropriate local agencies, any drills, plans, or other arrangements to meet such emergencies as fires, tornadoes, lockdowns, or other such events, natural or man-made, which require special measures for protecting the safety and welfare of students and staff in accordance with law.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Burton, to adopt board policy EBBC, emergency drills. Mr. Centers, would you take the roll, please?
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Burden.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Then that takes us to item G, hearing from board members. And as has become our custom, I will open it up to any board member who has any comments that they'd like to make tonight. Boy, nobody's raising their hands. Okay. Oh, Mrs. Frank.
Happy Thanksgiving.
There you go.
Thank you. Any other comments? Is it,
Just a reminder that we do not have school. The district will be closed on Wednesday, and I will echo your comments. We wish all of our families and our wonderful community a very happy Thanksgiving.
thank you, Mrs. Alquist. I just want to thank the members who were here tonight, the community members, and those handful of people who may have been watching on television for their patience as we work through these new laptops. It's also a little bit different because our microphones toggle on and off, and they are extremely sensitive, and we're getting used to touching them and toggling them on when we have something to say. So we're getting used to it, and we appreciate your patience. Thank you. And if there's, Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you, President Johnson. Before we have too many meetings again, we will, I'll not have another opportunity to mention that the robotics team will be having an open house on December 6th at Dickinson Center, and everyone is welcome. If you've not seen what the kids do or what the robots do, or you just are curious and want to check it out, please stop by and prepare to be amazed.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. And if there is nothing else, and we are at the end of the agenda, if there's no more business to come before the board tonight, we are adjourned. Thank you.